guilty for doing what's best for you. But what I've learned is that if you expect everybody to agree with every decision that you make in life or understand every decision you make, you'll never be able to make any decision. And the older I've gotten and the more I experience, the more I understand how decisions don't get easier over time. They actually get harder. Hey guys, I'm back with another episode of Mental Wealth. This podcast is used to express thoughts, experiences, and lessons. I aim to be as transparent as possible. If you enjoy an episode, please don't forget to like, comment, and tell a friend. Thank you. Hey guys, welcome back to Mental Wealth. In today's episode, I plan to talk about setting boundaries without feeling guilty. I think we all struggle with setting boundaries, even me included. I mean, not being able to set proper boundaries hinders yourself from progressing. It's almost like when you have to trim the leaves on a dead plant. That's the way I kind of like to think about setting boundaries. Sometimes we like to keep the leaves even though they're not growing. And this affects us. I think the reason why a lot of people struggle with setting boundaries is because it makes them feel like a bad friend, a bad coworker, or even a family member. But people tend to feel guilty for doing what's best for them. I think it's important to talk about what are healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries are guidelines or limits that a person sets to identify safe and permissible ways for other people to behave towards them, and how do they respond to someone stepping outside of those limits. Healthy boundaries are about protecting your physical, emotional, and mental well-being. Healthy boundaries contain clarity, flexibility, respect for self and others, assertiveness, consistency, and self-awareness. There are many types of different boundaries. These boundaries include physical, emotional boundaries, mental boundaries, time boundaries, sexual boundaries, and material boundaries. Physical boundaries include your personal space. Emotional boundaries include your feelings and emotional well-being. Mental boundaries, these include your thoughts and beliefs. Because mainly what I notice is we limit our own beliefs and our own thoughts. And your thoughts shape you. You think it in your head and then you make it happen in real life. So these are very important. These are probably some of the most important. Because the mental boundaries help facilitate every other boundary and every other thing that you encounter. Healthy boundaries are important because they improve relationships. They help you create more healthier and respectful relationships. They increase self-respect by demonstrating that you value yourself and your needs. They reduce stress and anxiety by helping you avoid feeling overwhelmed or taken advantage of. And they enhance communication. They promote clear and honest communication. And I've noticed that in today's society, there are a lot of boundaries that people cross. But I think what has contributed to that is because people talk about their boundaries being crossed and how this affects them, but they don't talk about themselves trying to establish a healthy boundary. It's easier to bring up a problem when you haven't tried to create a solution. I mean, people complain about problems all day, and I wouldn't even say people complain about problems all day, but almost do nothing to fix them. I think it's important to understand the most important part of setting healthy boundaries and boundaries period is people feeling guilty for them wanting to set a boundary. And in our society, people tend to take a lot of advantage of each other. It's normal for people to take advantage of each other and take advantage of various situations. I think societal expectations and just the way we're conditioned helps contribute to people fear being rejected or even abandoned. And I know abandonment is an issue. I mean, it's been an issue for me in the past. And it's been an issue for a lot of different people I talk to. A lot of people don't know how to be alone. And this is another problem in itself. But people also tend to have people-pleasing tendencies. And what I've noticed about people-pleasing is that you end up pleasing everybody but yourself, so you're left empty. And by pleasing everybody but yourself, you never get what you want or need. I also believe what contributes to this is your own internalized beliefs and self-worth. I mean, people It's harder for people to be able to determine that they're worth more in life. I mean, life beats you up. It's not like we live in a society built on uplifting people and stuff. Your self-worth gets damaged over time, and it just keeps getting beat up, beat up, beat up. And since society is so fast paced, you rarely have time to sit back and reflect about how you feel and about how different things you have experienced have impacted your well-being. It's important to understand that guilt is a common feeling. You're not alone for wanting to do what's best for you. And this is hard for us to be able to overcome. Because a lot of times we think it's just us, and when in reality, everybody feels some form of guilt. Me, myself, I've felt guilt for doing what's best for me. But a lot of times you will feel guilty for doing what's best for you. But what I've learned is that if you expect everybody to agree with every decision that you make in life or understand every decision you make, you'll never be able to make any decision. And the older I've gotten and the more I experience, the more I understand how decisions don't get easier over time. They actually get harder. When you get older, you have to make decisions about getting married, getting jobs, various other different things. It doesn't get any easier to make decisions. But I think the only thing that does get easier is your ability to react to these decisions. I think it's also important to realize that setting boundaries is a form of self-respect, not being selfish. And what I've noticed about people is selfish people will call you selfish. The people who are more likely to call people selfish is because they're selfish and they've ran into a situation where they can't use you anymore, or they can't take advantage of the situation anymore. And so once they get called out upon this, then that's when you become selfish. When in reality, you're doing what's best for you. And people take advantage of relationships, so this doesn't really help. I think it's very important to talk about setting boundaries in specific relationships. This includes family. One of the unique challenges with this is acknowledging that family dynamics are often complex and deeply rooted, making boundaries particularly challenging. I know dealing with my family and stuff, like, we tend to have boundaries and stuff, but it's not as... I find that the older I get and the more I notice is that you see more issues when you try to set your own boundaries. And when you try to push back on different things versus just going with the flow and doing what somebody else wants you to do in particular, or agree with things that people want you to agree with, even though you don't agree with it. And the older I've gotten, the more I realized that growing up, I really didn't have as much of a... I've always had an opinion, but my opinion more so didn't matter. And even now, my opinion doesn't matter as much, but it matters to me. And so if I'm opinionated about something, or if I don't agree with something, I'm grown now. I'm an adult, so I don't have to do it. I don't have to agree with something you want me to agree with. This even when I think about in different families, this not particularly mine, but you have like financial boundaries. And you have people asking for money. Like, you become successful. You see it all the time, like with famous actors or athletes and stuff. And they're the only person in their family that made it and made themselves be successful. So they tend to have the burden of everybody else in their family asking them for money and loans, different kinds of supports that they couldn't ask them for. And so this creates problems when you become successful. And I think a lot of people think their problems stop when they become successful. When in reality, you incur a different set of problems the more success you see. I think what is important about this is to be prepared for resistance. Because with family members, you're accustomed to specific patterns. If they're used to asking you for money all the time, the one time you say no, now it's a problem. And even when I look at myself, when I think it's a Jay-Z quote, but it always sticks to me. But he said, when somebody says they have a problem with me, it's about something I didn't do for them. It's never about something I did for them. And this really hits home for me, because even when I look at even in my personal life, and somebody says they have a problem with me, they don't talk about all the things I did for them and stuff. It's more so the stuff I didn't do for you. And what I've noticed is, like, with family, friends, or whatever, people have a sense of entitlement. And especially when you become successful, people tend to feel entitled to your success. And this is why you need boundaries. I think also what is important is to focus on your own needs and well-being. rather than trying to change others. I mean, if you spend your life trying to change everybody and trying to get people to see things the way you see, it'll never happen. You'll go a lifetime tired and unsuccessful in this endeavor, because you're never going to change how somebody really feels until they decide to change themselves. And so the only thing you can change is your relationship with them and how you react to this. By practicing consistency and setting and trying to reinforce these boundaries over time, you'll definitely create some more success. When I look at boundaries with friends, it shows me the importance of reciprocity. With healthy friendships involve mutual respect and consideration for each other. And I think a lot of people struggle with this. A lot of people are in friendships, various relationships that the other person doesn't really, they don't consider them or respect them. So they constantly feel drained in this relationship. They constantly feel like they're giving more than they're getting. And that's what I've noticed when I look back at my friendships. I sit around and think about various friendships that I have with people. And I ask myself, does this person respect me? Does this person consider my opinions? Or is it more so them always asking me for something? And there's a problem when I say no. And even when I think about, like, when I'm not friends with somebody anymore, it's more so, not more so on me, it's more so on that I want it better and the other person didn't want better. Or we just wanted two different things. They had certain expectations in a friendship, and I had certain expectations in a friendship. And the older I get, the more I've noticed that, what does my fiance say all the time? What I've noticed, like, with the different friends I've encountered, I noticed that, like, majority of my childhood friendships were built on low maintenance friendships. So and I really observed this when I seen, like, how my fiance acts with her, like, friends and stuff, how they get each other stuff for Christmas, their birthdays, and so forth or whatever. And I'm like, dang, me and my friends have never done that. Or, like, we don't go out our way to try to make sure our friend has a good birthday or anything, for real. But, I mean, it's completely different with guys, so I understand. I mean, we have a lot going on. This life. Life happens. People have kids and very stressful days and stuff that they have, so I can understand. But it makes me understand, like, when I sit back and look at various friendships that I have, I look at, what am I getting from this friendship? And if I can't even sit down and figure out what I gain or what I'm getting from this friendship, and then I almost see no point in being friends with the person. If I can't even come to you with advice or more, or a problem or anything, it's just like, why am I friends with you? But then you look back on yourself and you look back and see yourself constantly giving people advice, words of encouragement and stuff, and you're not getting it back. And so even me looking at my situation, I was just like, man, I gotta stop being friends with this guy, because I'm like, I don't really gain nothing from this. I think one of the biggest boundaries that we see in friendships are availability boundaries. And not being available to a person 24/7 or feeling obligated to have to respond. And what I've noticed, the older I got, you're not going to be available to anybody 24/7, like constantly, or able to respond all the time. But I think it's important for friends to understand this. And the more understanding you have, the better a friendship can be. Because people go through things. I go through things, you go through things. I mean, that's why I started this podcast. I think another boundary that you see is emotional support. You got to set limits on how much emotional support you can provide. And that's also what I've noticed too, like a big part of, with me being such a good friend. I've always been the therapist friend. So I've always noticed that I give a lot of advice to people, and I don't get nearly as great advice back. So this made me sit back and be like, or I noticed that majority of the advice I give people, they don't take it anyway. So I'm like, why am I sitting here trying to figure out better ways to help you and you won't even help yourself? So this definitely made me sit back and be like, nah, I can't give any more free advice. I mean, at this point, I get paid to give advice. So I'm literally giving you a free service and you won't even listen anyway. So it's really no point. I think also what's important is respecting personal space. I know the older I get, I really don't want anybody to come around me with negativity, gossip, or even being completely disrespectful. I'm like, man, you gotta go somewhere else with it. I don't even gossip about people and stuff. Anything I say about anybody is something I would definitely say to their face. So you can't even come around me with no negativity or anything like that, because that's not the way I want my life to be. And I don't like engaging in stuff like that. And what I've noticed is a lot of people talk about people that they hang out with. You're gossiping, and they talk about everybody else's issues, but not their own. And I've been more so one of the people that talk about my own issues. I can care less about somebody else's issues or a rumor I heard or any of that. That's why I really don't like people coming to me with that. So by me being and behaving in ways that I want, it has dramatically shifted people's ability to come to me with stuff like that, because I just don't have those kind of conversations. I think some tips in this is communicate your needs honestly and clearly. Because I think you can be honest, and a lot of people are honest, but if somebody doesn't understand it, then you basically you waste your time. But by communicating your needs, and it leaves no room for misinterpretation. And I know a lot of problems happen because somebody interpreted it this way and I interpreted it this way. I think another thing that happens is don't be afraid to say no to social events, activities, or anything you really don't have time or energy for. I think a lot of times we tend to be not yes men, but it's easier to say yes and harder to say no. And what I found is the more no's I say, the more peace I've gotten throughout the years, instead of just oh yeah, I'll do this, I'll go with you here, I'll do that whole time I don't want to. So the more no's I've given, the more peace I've seen internally. And just choosing the right friends. I mean, I think it's important for everybody to sit down and evaluate their friend group, and you have the wrong friends, it's time to find some new ones. Because, I mean, you can't change people who don't want to change themselves. Another boundary issue that I see are related to coworkers. And this involves professionalism and just people having respect for each other. It's important to maintain professional boundaries, especially in the workplace, because I mean, a lot of times I haven't worked as much, but just me observing the stuff my fiance tells me about, and then my sister and various different people who work and have full-time jobs and stuff around me, I noticed that the boundaries and the lines are very blurred and crossed a lot of times in the workplace. I mean, you have workplace romances, you have people disrespecting people on various jobs. I mean, there's a lot. You have people that flirt with you or whatever on job. And then even when you think about it, you spend more time with the people on your job than you do your family. So of course this might be one of the more important parts to establish some boundaries too, because when you talk to people about their jobs and stuff, it's rare that somebody says they love their job and stuff. So this is very important to work on, because if you're going to spend majority of your time at your job, you want to make it the best environment that you can thrive in. I think it's important to have time boundaries in this. This includes not working outside your designated hours or responding to work-related messages and stuff while you're at home. I mean, you need a break. That's why maybe if you're going to work at home, you should just get a work-from-home job at that point. So this is important. Your workload, not taking excessive workloads or responsibilities that are not yours. And this is what I've noticed in a lot of various jobs, is that you end up doing the work of other people and you don't get any credit for it. And I know a lot of people have probably experienced this in the workplace, and this can become draining, and this can definitely hinder your ability to want to even help people more so. If I'm going to do your work and you won't even do your own work, but we all suffer from you not doing your own work, so I end up having to do it anyway, it's going to make me more likely to not want to help you the next time, and so forth, and going forward. And another boundary that I see in workplaces is communication. I mean, you have people that constantly flirt with you on the job and this and that, and I could only imagine. I mean, I just hear the stories my fiance tells me, and then other people who tell me and stuff, various incidents and stuff they've had at work. But it's just, you have people that'll disrespect you, you have people that'll flirt with you over and over again, and there's a lot of people that sleep with each other at these various jobs. So you have a whole, what is it? They say like 80% of infidelities and stuff were committed by somebody you work with. And so that's the whole problem in itself that I could go down a deep rabbit hole on. But people just have to watch how they communicate with each other. And even when you're uncomfortable with the way somebody's communicating with you, you should be able to be like, all right, now you need to chill, because I came here to work. I didn't come here to flirt around, and more so. And even when I look at my fiance situation, and she's kind of going through Well, she kind of have went through a problem with this more so at her job, where she was working with some of her friends, so it was hard for her to get stuff done, and because they would just sit in there. And she's always, my fiance has always been a very hard worker, so she's not ever been the kind of person, she hates being around people that don't want to work as hard as her. So just by her working with her friends, the friends would sit around and not work as hard or just procrastinate the whole shift. This definitely rubbed her the wrong way, and I would say what really helped her was just getting a whole new set of friends, because she eventually got to sit down and just observe the friendship, and she realized that this wasn't a friendship that helped her in any regard. It was more so like a workplace thing, a workplace friendship that she should have just left at the workplace, and she learned this lesson. I think what's also very important is just not talking about personal stuff at the job. Like, all right, don't ask me any personal things while we're on this clock. If I invite you out later on or whatever, then we can discuss personal stuff. But as long as we're in this workplace, I don't want to talk about anything personal. I think some tips that could definitely help this is establishing clear expectations from your coworkers and managers. When people have different expectations in each other, you have different problems, and this is very important. I think what also can help too is just documenting your boundaries in writing. I think it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to write it down. So if you literally sit down and write down, like, all right, I don't want you to talk to me about boom, 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 then it'll make it more receptive to somebody. And at jobs, you have HR. So if a boundary issue is that problematic for you, you can always go to HR and talk to them about it. All right, now we're going to get into some practical strategies for setting boundaries. A great strategy is to identify your needs and limits. This happens by encouraging self-reflection and awareness. Some examples of some common boundaries that this entails are time, emotional, and physical boundaries. Another strategy is communicating clearly and assertively. Use I statements. And this is what I've noticed that helps people too, because if you go into a conversation with somebody and you're saying, you did this to me or you did that to me and stuff, it puts somebody on the defensive. And so once somebody's on the defensive, it's harder to get them to be receptive to what you're saying. But if you go into the conversation like, I felt this way when you did this, it completely reframes the conversation and allows the message to be communicated way more clearly. And just being direct and specific. And I know a lot of times in these kind of situations, you tend to apologize a lot. So I just wouldn't apologize. I wouldn't give unnecessary apologies, because this makes it to where it sounds like you're not as sincere with what you're saying. I know another strategy is practicing no without giving somebody an explanation. You can say no just because you don't want to do it. You don't have to give somebody an explanation. Well, no, because it made me feel like this and that. No, like no should be good enough. If you have to explain yourself to somebody, they're not trying to understand anyway. So this was definitely helped me too. If I say no to something, you should know why I'm saying no. I just don't feel like doing it, or it doesn't help me grow in any kind of way. So you should sit back and reflect on why I'm saying no. It's not my job to explain to you why I'm saying no. And I think a lot of people don't understand that no is a complete sentence. So we tend to follow no up with an explanation and stuff, but no is literally a complete sentence. I think a lot of people have fear of confrontation, but at the most, I mean, what are they going to do? Beat you up because you told them no? Then that's a whole different issue. I mean, no, you should be able to just say no and it'd be no problem. I know another strategy that helps is establishing consequences for boundary violations and being consistent with this. I know a person like me, I know the older I get, I'll just quit messing with somebody. I'm like, I don't need this friendship as much as you need. And it makes me sit back, and that's what definitely helps me in a lot. I know this might not be as healthy, but a lot of times I sit back, and if it's not an essential relationship or an essential need or whatever, then a lot of times I don't need a relationship as much as the other person needs. So I know when I encounter different situations where with me trying to set boundaries and people don't want to listen or whatever, I just quit dealing with you altogether. And I know this might make me sound like an ass or whatever, but I'll literally just cut the whole friendship off. I don't need it. You need this, and you stand to gain more stuff from this friendship than I do. You ask me for way more stuff than I can ask you for. So I just don't need a relationship. I think another strategy that people can do is start with small boundaries. You don't want to just start jump all the way over the top and stuff. You want to start small, then build up. Boom, boom, boom. And by starting small, this helps you build up your confidence over time, and it allows you to be able to say no and set boundaries more frequently. What is also very important for boundaries is shifting your mindset. This starts by, I know I probably said reframing your thoughts for like the last 3 episodes, but literally every idea and everything that has ever been created in this world started in somebody's head. By reframing your thoughts, you're able to challenge critical self-belief issues. And you can't get over it in your head, you can't get over it in real life. And what also helps in this is just focusing on the benefits of it, the benefits of setting these boundaries. And I think a lot of times when you look at the issues and not the benefits, you'll never get it done. And I notice a lot of people approach their problems like this, or approach like different problems they're faced with. They just sit back and think about the issues with it and not what good could come from it. I think what is also very important for shifting your mindset is practicing self-compassion. Treat yourself with kindness, understanding, and knowledge that you deserve better and to have your needs met. I probably am the hardest person on myself that anybody else could be. And this is probably why I struggled with my depression at one point and stuff, because I always beat myself up over stuff. I'll make one mistake and I'll just keep going back to it over and over again. I might be thinking about the same mistake for 3 months. And what's very helped me is just giving myself some grace. Like, everybody messes up. You're not going to get everything right. You're not going to do everything. I mean, there's a bigger plan in it. God always has a bigger plan for you. So if everything was supposed to go, everything is going to go how he wants it to go anyway. So just being able to extend yourself some grace stops you from being able to beat yourself up as much. And I know this is what's definitely helped me transform my whole everything. Just like I said earlier, just another strategy is focusing on the positive outcomes. When you focus on the positive outcomes, you're able to improve relationships, increase your self-respect, and reduce stress and anxiety. When you go into any situation just thinking about what could go wrong, you never learn what could go right. And I think another thing that's very important for people to do is recognizing healthy relationships. I think a lot of times we understand what's unhealthy, but we rarely know what is healthy. Healthy relationships that respect your boundaries, and unhealthy relationships to get rid of. Some common challenges that you'll face with setting boundaries are dealing with. When you deal with pushback, you should remember to stay calm and consistent. And don't backtrack on what you're saying, and don't change. If you go into it with a bad tone or something, then yeah, you should change that. But stay consistent in your tone. Stay calm. Because anytime you get angry, or mainly anytime you get angry or defensive in various situations, the communication is done right there anyway. Because now neither party is listening. They're just trying to defend their various points and their various issues. What is very important to do in this is reiterate your boundaries. Like, all right, I told you I had a problem with you for always asking me for money. I have a problem with that. And then so somebody asks you again, like, all right, let me borrow $100 or something. You have to reiterate to them, I just told you that I have a problem with when you ask me for money. I think a lot of times that people usually don't take things seriously the first time. So sometimes you do have to show people better than you can tell them. And just understand that everybody won't like your boundaries. Everybody won't agree with what you're trying to do. Everybody won't agree with decisions you make in life. Some other common challenges that you will face are managing feelings of being uncomfortable in this. And it's okay to feel uncomfortable. I mean, nothing changes until you are uncomfortable. As long as you're comfortable, you stay in the same consistent state. So what helps is to get okay feeling uncomfortable. And if you're uncomfortable, there's various techniques and self-soothing things that you can do that can help in your discomfort. And another challenge that I've seen personally that a lot of people face is overly explaining themselves. It's important to remember that you don't owe anyone any explanation. And I know this might be hard, but the sooner you understand this lesson, the sooner you're able to take this lesson fully in, the more you'll be able to grow. You don't owe anybody anything. The world owes you nothing. The things you get in this world are the things you work for. And a lot of times you work for things and still don't get them. And that's a harsh reality of life. When dealing with these situations, your goal should be to be clear, not to be up for debate. And this is where a lot of people face issues. Some key takeaways that I want you to take away from this episode, if you don't learn anything or if you don't retain any of the stuff that I said, is boundaries are more so about self-respect and not selfishness. Setting limits is a way to honor your own needs and your well-being. Healthy boundaries are clear, consistent, and communicated assertively. People need to know where your lines are. Boundaries protect your physical, emotional, and mental. They create a safe space and respectful space for you. There are different types of boundaries. These include physical, emotional, mental, time, sexual, and material. Understanding these different boundaries helps you set appropriate limits in various areas of your life. Another thing is setting boundaries reduces your stress and anxiety. It prevents you from being taken advantage of or overwhelmed. Another thing is healthy relationships respect boundaries. If you have any relationship that's not trying to respect your boundaries, it's an unhealthy relationship. So this can also help you identify what are healthy relationships and what are unhealthy relationships. If somebody consistently disregards your limits, it's a red flag. And finally, guilt is common when you try to set boundaries, but it's often misplaced. Remember, you deserve to have your needs met. And this may be hard for you to fully understand, but you will understand. If you don't understand it today, you will understand it one day. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll be back with you for another one. Peace.